You are listening to the CADDle Call podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentek Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The CADDle Call podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the CADDle Call podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentek Consultants. I am Jim, your talkative and fun host, and with me, as always, is my partner,
Rocco.
I
think I'm more fun than you, though.
You're not even a little bit of fun, which is why you must suffer through the engineering joke of the week. All right, Rocco, you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
All right. What is an engineer's favorite dessert?
I know. What is it?
Pie, of course. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. We bring you that terrible joke in honor of International Pie Day, which just was 2 days ago. So, all right. So that bad joke that we made you all suffer through because Rocco had no fun. All right, folks. So we actually have two guests on the show today. We have Esri's Michael Davidson. He's here once again, and he's brought a friend with him all the way from across the pond. We have Devrez Karabacak, who heads up the GeoDin product team. So, gentlemen, we very much appreciate you guys taking the time to be here today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it. Glad to be back.
There you go. It's always nice. All right, so we are going to be talking with these gentlemen about how the design and engineering and GIS worlds are kind of integrating, right? And how that affects both of our Civil 3D and our GIS workflows, right? So it should be an interesting topic today. But before we get into that, though, let's learn a little bit about both of our guests. So Devrez, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and GeoDin and what your role is over there?
Well, thank you. Let me start with thanking you for having me on this show. I'm really excited about it. So my name is Devrez Karabacak. As mentioned, I'm a head of product at GeoDin, and I'll go into what GeoDin is in a minute. My background is actually not civil engineering or GIS, but more a mechanical engineer, and I did study precision sensors and data acquisition technologies in my past life, and got into geodata by actually coincidence when I joined Fugro about 14 years ago now for geodata and ground data acquisition technology development. And for those of you who don't know, Fugro is the world's leading geodata company. We've been in acquiring ground data for about 60 plus years across 50 countries now. And I've been working in different roles from hardware to software on how to acquire, analyze, and deliver geotechnical and geophysical data. And since 3 years, I lead the GeoDin product, which is our geotechnical data management and analysis software, which has been used internally for over 3 decades. And we started sharing it with some of our clients over the years. And a couple of years ago, we saw that there was a need in the market in the AEC sector for a better structured ground data management software. So we decided to open it up more widely, which is when we started partnering up with the leading companies in the industry, such as Autodesk, and more recently with Esri. And I got the privilege of meeting and working with exciting people like Michael on the call.
Nice. Very, very nice. So that's an interesting path to get to where you are. Don't usually get mechanical guys working out that way. I'm fascinated in how those things go. So, all right. So I tell you what, Michael, let's put it to you now. It's your turn, right? What would you like to share with listeners about your role over at Esri?
So I'm coming at this from an academic background, actually, of structural and geotechnical engineering. Spent about 10 years carrying out university research projects and implementing those findings in commercial software for bridge structural analysis and deep foundation design, and got into geostatistics towards the end of that period as well. But I do remember just this light bulb moment for me, or revolutionary moment for me, of finding out that there's this thing called interoperability back in about 2019 as part of this big United States multi-state DOT pooled fund project to try to bring together BIM and bridges. And just remember my mind being blown that, you could be in one software package. You wouldn't have to start from scratch. You could draw upon information from another software package. So really just been smitten with interoperability ever since then. And I joined Esri as a product manager right at 3 years ago. And it wasn't just trying to integrate BIM information across tools, but BIM, CAD, and GIS. So just felt really fortunate to have that chance to go into that role. And at Esri, my role as a product manager is to really dig into the workflows of GIS analysts and civil engineering teams and field teams, and then go back to the product development and engineers at Esri and work with them to push for integrations that make it a little bit simpler for all those different teams to collaborate on the same project data. So I work with Esri developers and partners, Autodesk, folks like Devrez here from the GeoDin team to try to make all that happen across all of these different software stacks. So
Nice. Very nice. All right. So I tell you what, folks. So today we are going to get into geotechnical workflows, right? It's not a traditionally simple area of work inside the big name civil tools. And I think that's changing, though. And that's kind of why our guests are here, right? To kind of talk about what their tools can do to help those of us who need to do subsurface work. And I kind of want to get into the ways that you can manage geotechnical data and carry out subsurface analysis and tools like Civil 3D, and then sharing your engineering findings using GIS, right? So let's start by getting kind of a good overview of these products that our guests work with and how they fit into this space. So, Devrez, what exactly is GeoDin, right? I mean, how does it work and how does it fit into the civil design space?
Oh, thank you. Indeed, it is not an easy space to work with, and I think the industry overall has had challenges in this area for a long, long time. I always think the infrastructure world lives in sort of three traditionally siloed ecosystems. One is, well, above surface world, right? That's sort of the designed and constructed world. That's the area where Autodesk and its products are quite strong in. I don't need to tell this podcast's audience about that. They're the experts in that area. Then the next is, of course, the surface, the context in which you build your infrastructure, and that is the GIS ecosystem that Michael and Esri are innovating so rapidly in and bringing some exciting technologies and innovations out there. And then the part that we bring in as GeoDin is actually the below surface element. That's the third element of any infrastructure project, and traditionally that element has been a bit of a afterthought, if you will, because it hasn't been at the forefront of the design process, whereas actually it needs to be in many senses considered early on. Because, actually the ground, if you think about it, is a bit of an obstacle to your business objectives and the objectives of building your infrastructure. It gets in the way in a sense, doesn't it? So, and it has a lot of high variability. I mean, geological conditions and ground, even over short distances, can vary immensely. And the uncertainties about ground can impact your project very badly. So, understanding the ground early on in your design work, in your planning work, can avoid those costly reworks and construction delays or over-engineering and cost overruns, and even in God forbid, in some very extreme circumstances, catastrophic failures of the infrastructure afterwards that leads to lives being lost or massive costs thereafter can be prevented if you know the ground early on in your project and you make the right choices at the right time. The challenge has always, the dilemma has always been that you're actually making some of these critical choices about your infrastructure when you know the least about your site and your ground conditions. You may be picking your corridor, you may be picking your tunnel route or your bridge crossing, and yet you haven't been to the site. Maybe you haven't explored what's in the ground, you haven't done your geotechnical or geophysical scans and site investigations, and we want to change that, and that's sort of where GeoDin comes into play. We have a lot of different tools to make sure that from early on in the project you start collecting geodata in a structured database that can be shared within an organization or across even organizations with your partners and collaborators to make sure that you start building that single source of truth of your ground conditions and make that part of your decision-making process throughout the planning, design, construction, and even the infrastructure operation phase.
Yeah. It's absolutely it's amazing to me. It's always been a long-term issue I've seen in my career that, I think everybody listening and everybody on this call knows that getting out of the ground can account for like 30% of your total project cost. And like you were saying, Deborah, it's the one area that we're making decisions blind, right? Without knowing the soil's conditions, what kind of rocks, what's the water table, all that stuff under there. That 30% can easily become a lot more, on your job if you're not careful. So that's something that you should absolutely be looking to get in earlier. So I love what you guys are doing there. So all right, so I tell you what. So Michael, I apologize. I'm going to be doing a lot of double questions here today, sincere to you. So now I'm going to turn to you for the Esri side, right? And ask you, can you describe ArcGIS and how does it play into the civil and geotechnical world?
Yeah, happy to. So from the ArcGIS side, we're all about providing geographic context and then connecting the work of all these different project teams, all the way from those early planning type decisions all the way out through design, construction, and once you get out into operations and maintenance. So, what we aim for is for ArcGIS to help civil engineers and CAD teams to understand where their projects exist with respect to all of the things that are surrounding that project from the real world and how their project, the things that they're trying to build, they're trying to design and build, interact with the surroundings. So we see engineers using ArcGIS to support their analysis of things like terrain and hydrology and land use, and that goes out not just into vertical type structures, but also transportation networks, utilities, environmental type activities as well. And through the integrations that we have with Autodesk tools like Civil 3D, we see that engineers can bring GIS data directly into their design workflows, and they're not having to wait on the GIS team, for example, to package up shape files. They can just grab all that information they need for existing conditions on demand is the direction that we've been headed in. And when those civil design teams do make a design decision or they use tools like GeoDin to carry out their analysis, what we want to do is help support that process of keeping other teams up to date through the GIS. So whether it's trying to inform a GIS analyst of a decision you've made on the civil side, or keep a project manager up to date so they can inform a client, or even for a field team out on the project site. So it's really about geographic context and then connecting the work that these civil teams do with all the other teams that need their information.
And it's hugely important as well. Again, I've been doing this for 40 years now, and I know, growing up through the civil, as a young guy doing civil design work, we all too often for many, many years, you kind of design on an ideal site. You didn't look carefully at what was around you, what was connecting to you, what might impact you more long term in terms of, roads and underground systems and what's in there and the subway that was, installed and abandoned 35 years ago kind of thing. And it bit us so many times. And, getting a tool like Esri that can get you, like you said, these two packages combined, I think work amazingly well, right? In the civil side, we're used to this is our site. We work on this site, but you need to know what's below you, to the left, to the right, to the north, to the south. You've got to know all of that at the same time for effective, efficient design. So I think it's really important what you guys are doing. All right, folks. So, like I was saying earlier, and it sounds like, both Michael and Deborah has agreed with my statement, right? Subsurface work, it's regarded as one of the most difficult things to do inside of tools like Civil 3D and other site design systems. It's been a specialty area, I guess, that most design firms tend to pass off to specialists because a lot of the out-of-the-box civil tools are really focused on surface level work, right, for things like roads and grading and so on. And look, for a lot of us, pipe networks, right? That's about as much of the underground stuff as we ever look at or work with, right? We're digging a trench here. Is there another pipe? Nope, we're fine. And we ignore the rest. And I'm hoping to change some minds on that and change some processes for our listeners with today's conversation. So Devrez, what are some of the challenges that you see with managing geotechnical data for our civil folks listening out there?
It is indeed. It is indeed been a challenging and specialized field, like you stated, for a long time. And one of the reasons is that indeed ground is very complex, and understanding is a whole different field. And that's fine. You know, you have experts that are doing these surveys and site investigations and laboratory testings, and collating these wonderful reports about what is below the surface. And then what they've been doing traditionally has been putting those into large reports and turning it into PDFs most of the time, and almost sending it over the fence to the design team. So what happens with this valuable geotechnical insights about the ground? Well, they don't trickle into the hands of the designers in a format that is easily digestible and easy to understand and visualize, and put it into the context of their infrastructure design process, so that they can make the decisions with the right data at their fingertips. And that is why we felt that there was a gap in this industry. And that's why we started collaborating with Autodesk and Esri about this. And together, we actually very determined to make sure that the AEC industry has an efficient workflow that allows them to plan, design, and build a safe and sustainable infrastructure that doesn't require them to over-engineer for safety factors, or have a huge carbon footprint, or on the other case, have unsafe structures that later fail during the build and operate phase. So what we did as a first step in this direction was our partnership with Autodesk. What we built is a very simple plugin, an app that you can actually, all of our listeners can download from the Autodesk App Store free of charge. It's called the Civil 3D Ground, GeoDin Ground for Civil 3D plugin, which allows you to connect to the geotechnical database that is curated by those experts that have gone out and collected all of this ground data. Maybe they've formulated their ground layers, and you can bring it into Civil 3D natively and start visualizing those boreholes in your design environment with the context. So you don't start with an empty sheet of paper, if you will, to start designing your infrastructure, but you already have the ground data in that environment natively. And also with this ground plugin, you can generate 3D views of the subsurface based on the geotechnical data that has been collected. So you know what ground you're going to be interacting with during the construction phase. You can start making decisions about, well, I want to avoid this area because it has a problematic surface or subsurface. I want to not go through this hard layer here because it's going to be very costly to drill through, etc. So, and you can use all of the wonderful tools that civil designers are used to using in Civil 3D, like volumetric calculations that allow you to analyze how much excavations you need of whatever material and what that means for your construction timeline and cost. So this integration is already that we released in April 2025 has generated a lot of interest and buzz in the industry. And what we're doing now is actually taking that step forward with Michael and the Esri team to also link it the subsurface and the surface that Esri is so strong in.
That's a great setup, man. That's the stuff I wish I had for years and years. All right, so Michael, again, duplicating questions, right? How does Esri and GIS kind of fit in general into this geotechnical space?
Well, and I think for the Esri side of things, it comes back to that context and then connecting all these other project teams. So, like if you're back in the planning stage, you're trying to figure out where do we drill, where should we position these boreholes. We definitely see the interplay between GeoDin and ArcGIS to be able to help make those types of decisions much more aligned across project teams. Or we also see it creating potential pathways, ArcGIS, to fuel that GeoDin product suite with things like all the historical data that's stored in the GIS, for example. Or maybe you're out at design and trying to go toward construction. What we see is some opportunities to make the analysis from the geotechnical tools from GeoDin available to owners and project managers, so they can be more confident on decisions like, do we move forward, and go into detailed design, or do we move forward into construction, or, oh, hey, wait a minute, we need to go characterize, this trouble spot or this area of uncertainty in the subsurface across the project site. As Devrez said just a moment ago, you have these geotechnical reports, and I've seen them. I know Devrez knows them very well. They can be hundreds of pages. And what we want to do is we want to equip these project decision makers with these compelling visualizations of all that data and that analysis from the civil team, instead of having a project manager or somebody who's trying to make that key decision have to pore over that 600-page report and try to make sense of the subsurface across their project site. Just as one more example, through our joint integrations with Civil 3D and GeoDin, we see potential ways for civil designers to share out their boring locations or supporting information, the boring logs themselves, to keep all those other project teams informed and try to create that back and forth with, I don't know, the field teams, for example, which borings are complete, which borings remain to be done, or were there any unexpected conditions encountered at a given boring, and then allow that interplay so that you can have those multiple teams make a decision together, rather than have a little bit of chaos as unexpected conditions out on site occur. So we see a lot of different opportunities for ArcGIS and GeoDin to really team up in this space.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good setup. All right, so Rocco, you've been over there napping. We're gonna wake you up. So look, I know we work mostly with site and survey people in this arena. Do you think that simplifying the geotechnical work, like these two systems are doing, has the potential to open up new business areas for those clients?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not an area that we've delved into significantly, like you said, but it's an interesting topic, and having the right tools that work together makes a huge difference too, right? Because we all know over the years there have been so many plugins for this and so many plugins for that, and if the tools don't work together, people just get frustrated and move on. Especially nowadays with how busy folks are. And the limited staff shortages. So knowing that you have a partnership like we're talking about today is huge. And I think it will open up a lot of opportunities for folks in our industry.
Yeah. No, like I said, I think that's a great point, that having those isolated 30 or 40 different apps that do different things for you is frustrating. When you can get into a structure here where you've got a partnership between three large well-established firms like this to give the data in one central source, I think it's amazing what the potential is there for our civil clients. All right, folks, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break here to let our sponsors get a word in for today. And when we get back, I want to talk about some of the specific tools in these two systems, right? And where Michael and Devrez see them going in the future, all right? So hang around, folks. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the CADDle Call podcast. Hey everybody, it's Jim and Rocco from Zentek Consultants, and we wanted to talk to you guys today about Managed CAD Services by Zentek Consultants. Look, every one of us out there in the design space, we're looking for that power person who can handle all of your standards and templates and file structures and answer all your CAD problems, but we run into two big issues. Number one, those folks don't come cheap. Especially when you start adding in all of the taxes, insurances, and time off and stuff you got to add in. And then you've got to find someone that you can trust. And that's where Zentek Consultants come in, because I got to figure you guys are listening to us every week talk. You got to trust us. And we come in and handle all your CAD management needs for you with our Managed CAD Services contracts, an annual contract where we can be your CAD manager, doing all the things that you need done for an affordable rate with people whose technology acumen you know and trust. So Rocco, why don't you tell folks where they can find out more about Managed CAD Services and get the ball rolling?
Yep, you can hit up our website, zentechconsultants.net, and if you go under the services section, you'll be able to see the details. You could also give us a call, 866-824-4459, or drop us an email, sales@zentechconsultants.net.
There you go. All the CAD management help that you need but have not been able to get is available with Managed CAD Services by Zentek Consultants. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the CADDle Call podcast. We are talking with Michael Davidson from Esri and Devrez Karabacak from GeoDin, and hopefully Devrez, I didn't butcher your name too badly, but everybody
No,
listening knows I'm a knucklehead. So, all right.
perfect.
So, all right, good. So we're talking to these guys kind of about their latest and greatest offerings that make geotechnical and subsurface work kind of more accessible to those of us in the civil 3D world and the environments that we generally work in. And we talked about their the general processes, right, about their systems in the top half of the show. And in this segment, I want to hear about the specific tools and workflows and concepts that their companies are offering that can help us in these spaces. So, Devrez, let's start with you. What do you think are the most important GeoDin features, and how do they tie into a tool like Civil 3D?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Indeed, we have been trying to address this complexity and geotechnical data for 3 decades now, as I mentioned. Over the last 10 years, a lot of our clients have asked for the GeoDin software to use it themselves as well. So we've been making it ever more user-friendly over time and growing its capabilities and its ecosystem. So we have 3 key elements in the GeoDin ecosystem, and but what I mean by the ecosystem is ability to form a single source of ground data to make sure that you gather, structure, and analyze ground data to de-risk your infrastructure project and optimize your design and build later on. And we built these 3 pillars around that whole philosophy. Essentially, it starts with our tools on the site. It's critical that geotechnical teams go to the site and capture the field accurately and correctly from the get-go. So we have what's known as the GeoDin On-Site app that allows you to capture the exact coordinates with your GPS unit in the field, describe what you observe, take photographs of the ground conditions, of samples that you may have drilled through, and generate, for example, QR codes, labels on them if they are going to go through laboratory analysis later, that samples do not get mixed up, and so on. And then all of that data is seamlessly ingested into what we call the single source of truth for the ground. It's a GeoDin database. And that database is something you can work with in your office. Both geotechnical engineers or geologists, as well as some of the designers, actually work with it to actually get the insights of the ground. They model the ground, they make decisions based on the laboratory results or the field acquired data on what those layers and strata are in which locations, and how does that fit into their plans around the site. And then the third element that we just released is, as I mentioned before, is the the Autodesk Civil 3D plugin GeoDin Ground, which allows you to bring that rich data set and connect it into your design environment. And that was the point of that, was to get away from those hundreds of pages that Michael talked about in PDF reports, so that you don't have to consume that data by scrolling through PDFs and trying to make sense of it, but really make the ground data lively and enriching in your design process. So those boreholes come to life with their exact coordinates in the Civil 3D environment. You can, from those drilled locations, generate 3D ground models and start interacting with that, and even test scenarios. For example, one of the features that we released recently was to virtually drill the ground after you model it. So, for example, maybe there are areas where you haven't done drilling or soil sampling that you think, wait a minute, I'm making design choices here, but I don't know what's there, and there has been no drilling there. So what would the ground look like there? And then you can actually create a virtual drill log that changes the ground model, and then you can stress test your design choices with artificial borehole logs, essentially, to say, what if the ground looked like this? Would that make my decision making differently? If the ground was shaped like this, would I avoid this area? And then you know actually how much the uncertainty is impacting your design choices. And you may ask for more site investigation in that scenario and go back to actually doing more soil analysis. You can also start slicing the ground according to the corridor you're designing or the tunnel path you're designing. This is a functionality that's coming up soon that we are testing with some of our pilot adopters, where the corridor you design in Civil 3D allows you to generate a live cross-section and slice the ground, and you know which path you're going to take. Then you know what ground conditions you're going to encounter during that path. And it allows you to start really interacting between the ground and the design around it to make the optimal choices there.
That's a heck of a process. I'm fascinated by the idea of the virtual bores. Like I said, we've all worked in this industry. You know how often you go out and you're like, oh, we didn't bother to drill out there. We didn't do any of that. It should be fine. And then you find out it's not, right? Be able to go through and get, general, and then if you see concerns, like you said, be able to send people back out for important areas that you didn't necessarily get the first time around. That's amazing. I love that. All right, so I tell you what, Michael, how about from the Esri end, right? What tools do you think folks should know about for this type of work?
Yeah, so with ArcGIS, we really lean into these what we call connected data environments. We really just want to make connections with respect to the ArcGIS system to other systems, Autodesk, et cetera. And what we want to do over time is make it easier for data to flow back and forth between GIS into and out of those systems. And so we see this work with GeoDin, including in Civil 3D, as a great example. And what I want to do here is just kind of speak to three patterns that we see coming and touch on some of the ArcGIS tools that kind of show up along the way. So one pattern that we see from our end is a potential future inflows from ArcGIS into that GeoDin suite of tools, where we do see GeoDin as that source of truth for managing, for analyzing the geotechnical data. And so we're working to make it simpler and simpler to bring geotechnical data that's existing in the GIS, pre-existing, into those GeoDin tools, such as I alluded to earlier, historical borehole data, for example. And that could be stored in either cloud or on-premise type environments. So that's where big foundational ArcGIS products like ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Enterprise would come in to take the historical borehole data, for example, that's in the GIS and get that potentially in the future, get that down into to work with the GeoDin suite. We also see another pattern where the integrations can combine together to boost collaboration and information sharing while working in tools like Civil 3D. So we see ways that it can serve both file-based and services-based workflows. Just as one example, Devrez and team last year, they had a session at Autodesk University, and they were showing GeoDin's capabilities, including GeoDin Ground that works within Civil 3D. And at the end, there was a nice little touch to working together across Civil 3D, GeoDin Ground, and Esri's plugin ArcGIS for AutoCAD to allow for borehole locations and supporting documentation, the bore logs themselves to remain synchronized between the Civil 3D user and the GIS web layers. So you can show that information up in what we call like a web map, for example. It makes it really easy for, say, project managers or owners, any other teammates that are either in the office or even out on the project site to work with that borehole information. And we're certainly highlighting at Esri conferences this year that workflow of consuming 3D analysis results that are made possible by tools like GeoDin Ground and GeoDin Suite. Bring all that information together in foundational ArcGIS tools like ArcGIS Pro to author these immersive 3D scenes that can then be shared right back up into ArcGIS Online or Enterprise, so that you just have a simple web browser experience to show that geotechnical analysis in context, make it available to an owner or a project manager so they can make those better decisions. And then a third pattern that we're really excited to team with Devrez and his team is these potential future outflows from GeoDin to ArcGIS. And it's that same spirit of utilizing ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Enterprise through services to allow for that information that's being built up through GeoDin or Civil 3D to make its way to other project stakeholders so they can stay up to date on which boreholes are done, which boreholes need to be done still, that kind of thing, so that we get these better known state of the characterization of the site's subsurface. So we see three patterns there, and it's a smattering of tools actually.
Nice. So yeah, these are all big things, right? And as you guys listening, you can tell, right? These are really big functional changes and tools that we're just seeing hit the market. I mean, and I think it's just a huge step in the right direction to help design firms handle subsurface work a lot more easily. Look, in my mind, it's always been a disconnect, right, between the site design and the real world issues that we get into, right, with both construction or geotechnical work and systems like mining and so on. The industry often ignores what's underground until you hit it in the field. And that's when reality sets in and it blows up your budget. Yeah, I think, integrating into the most used tools like Civil 3D, right? It's a huge move in the right direction. And I'm hoping that there are plans to keep expanding on these concepts, right? Which is where we're going to go next here. So Michael, what does the future of these integrations, right, look like at Esri?
Yeah, and so I probably got pretty excited and shared quite a bit of the potential future directions just a moment ago, but no worries. Just to kind of recap, I mean, what I'm highly motivated to do is continue teaming with the GeoDin team, with Autodesk throughout 2026 and beyond, and explore those three patterns that I talk about. So the inflows from GIS to GeoDin, and let them be that source of truth for data management with all the tooling they already have. Those outflows from from GeoDin out to GIS to keep those other project stakeholders up to date, and not just a buzzword, but really let those other project teams truly collaborate on the data rather than having to do things like make those gut judgment calls while they're poring over the hundreds of pages of those geotechnical reports. So I would say that, just the future directions that I see just for mine is really looking for ways to tighten the integrations for those workflows, including in Civil 3D, so that we just can achieve fewer picks and clicks to allow for, once that analysis, for example, is carried out, is to keep, once we have a certain status update across the collection of geotechnical information, just keep all of the other project stakeholders up to date. So it's, inflows, facilitating within while that analysis is being carried out, and then those outflows are really the three kind of future directions that I see for my part for us to really come together.
Nice. All right, so Deborah, it's kind of same thing for you. What's GeoDin planning over the next couple of years?
I think Michael hit the nail on the head, really. I mean, what we are really excited about is to close the triangle between those three traditionally siloed workflows in the AEC industry: the above surface design world, the surface world of GIS and Esri, and the subsurface. We are really making fundamental changes on how the whole design and build process is going to go ahead in the coming decades, I think, and indeed making friction-free data accurately available with the right coordinates and the right context to the right people is key, and so that decisions are made correctly, reworks are minimized, and errors are avoided across the life cycle. That means sharing of information. That means making use of information that already exists. Michael already highlighted the historical data. Most of the time, there is some geotechnical context from past projects that may be from public entities that have done earthworks in the area or site investigations in the area that we could unlock and bring into feeding your GeoDin database from data that was previously hosted in Esri, all the way to sending out those people to the field to acquire more data with the GeoDin apps, and feeding that back to the Esri environment and saying, look, these additional site investigations have been done, and here's what they have found out about in the field, making sure everyone's up to date on the progress of the site investigation, and then make sure that the same site investigation data, same ground data, becomes the drawing board and the canvas for the designers to start working on in Civil 3D, for example. And as they build the 3D context of it, that data through the ArcGIS for Autodesk plugins that Michael and his team support becomes again fed back into the Esri environment. So you can sort of see this three-way collaboration really bringing a loop of data sharing together that allows you to work in an efficient and effective manner, and making sure that teams across companies, across stakeholders are all on the same page regarding their surface, subsurface, and above surface.
Nice. Yeah, I like where you guys are going, man. I think you're all on the right track here. It's going to make a big, big difference. So, Rocco, so look, do you see a lot of active interest in this type of, subsurface geotechnical work with our civil clients, or do you think this is more of an area that they still need to be educated on?
I mean, from my perspective, and we're not exposed to everybody out there, right? But I mean, from my day in day out discussions, there's definitely education that needs to be put out there, and that's why we're doing what we're doing today, right? Having these great guys out here to talk, because it's your average Joe doesn't know. Right? And you go to an individual website and you look for a specific tool, and what does that tool solve for me today? But you don't really think about the integration of 1, 2, 3 tools. And again, historically, we've all had a little bit of a rough go at trying to marry, so many products together that it doesn't even cross your mind. So learning about partnerships like this is fantastic, and I think that there's education that needs to definitely be put out there. So we appreciate you guys joining us for sure.
That's good stuff. So, okay. So I tell you what, folks, as always, I like to give our guests the last word so they can tell us about stuff that I didn't think I should ask. So, Devrez, we're going to get you first, right? What else should people know about GeoDin or your integrations?
One of the key things is that we've built into our DNA from day one as being interoperability and also data independence and data residency. So we have one of our mottos on our website. If you go there, you will notice is your data is yours. So we want to make sure that you get to choose where you store and how you store and with whom you share your ground data, because ground data is so critical these days. It's also very politically sensitive. So we want to make sure that you have a choice of storing it locally on your on-premise network or on the cloud of your choice. And then what we're doing with this partnership and interoperability team is unlock that data to platforms that you most commonly work with and build those doorways for your app data to be shared across. But it's up to you to choose with whom you share and what statuses you share. So we're really sort of giving the power to the users to be able to do it and then make the choices around that. And what we want to know a bit more, I think, from the industry is what are the pain points and friction points for you guys? Please do reach out to us. We're quite reachable. And with these partnerships now, we have more and more network of tools to help you. But please find us on LinkedIn or email us, and let's get that conversation going on what can we do for the industry better.
Nice. Always good to talk to your clients. I like that. All right, Michael, so same question for you from the Esri side.
So I want to echo what Devrez just said, and then go back to Rocco's insight that a lot of this is about awareness. Hey, I had no idea that you could have this sort of three-way synergy, so to speak, and try to bring together all these different workflows and teams. So what I would want to do is just encourage the listeners out there to please reach out to us and let us know how your civil teams, even your GIS or your field teams are working with geotechnical data to date. We want to know, what's the current state and what are the big challenges that you're seeing in working with subsurface data to try to keep these projects moving forward. So there are a lot of avenues out there for you to get in touch with us. It could be as simple as, pinging me I don't want to throw Devrez out there to it, pinging one of us on LinkedIn. It could be as simple as that, but there's also very formal mechanisms out there. There's the Esri community where we have dedicated spaces for these BIM and CAD integrations, including for the work that's integrated into tools like Civil 3D. And you can share your use case, your workflow. You can ping us on there, and we'd be highly motivated to get on a call with you and learn more about the challenges that you're seeing. You can also see us at conferences throughout the year. There's mentioned earlier, Autodesk University is a perennial one for us. There's also several Esri conferences out there throughout the year for infrastructure management and GIS, where we'd love to just come and learn more about kind of your current state and your challenges. Again, so that we can take that back and then make these integrations that much more effective across these different disciplines.
Nice. Very nice. All right, folks, I think with that, we are going to wrap it up. But I did want to take a minute just to thank Michael and Devrez one more time for really taking the time out of your day to be here with us and talk to our listeners and give them a little bit of education on what's coming their way. And I think what you guys are doing is really important. So I just want to say we appreciate you, gentlemen.
Thanks so much, Jim and Rocco. Really appreciate the opportunity to be back with you all.
Thanks for providing this platform to educate the industry and as well as share some of the exciting things we're cooking in the kitchen.
There you go. And we appreciate it. All right, guys. With that, we are going to get out of here, and we'll catch you all next time on the CADDle Call podcast. All right, everybody. Today's CADDle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentek Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentek Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentek strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentek?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentekconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentekconsultants.net, or you can even call us, 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from you all.